Okay. So I'll start at some basic principles. I will be using jargon. I know we've got an eclectic audience here today. I'll try not to get too technical, but I want everybody to get value out of this. So at certain points, I will delve down into some more technical aspects, so they may thoroughly understand exactly what the subject matter is. So to start off, what is cybercrime? Well, basically, cybercrime is any computer-related crime. It's where the internet or computers are used is generally referred to as cybercrime, and we'll go over cyber fraud and so on. I'll kick straight onto some examples. Examples of cybercrime would be the use of things like malware, hackers, denial of service attacks, computer viruses, cyber stalking, fraud, identity theft, and so on. So this would be a list of the criteria, the certain types of examples that would be there. There's certain characteristics to cybercrime and to these sort of events, if you like, and they would be automation. I mean, the automation of mundane tasks these days it is very easy with cybercrime. You can automate scanning hosts, sending out emails, all those sort of things. So that tends to be a characteristic of a cybercrime. Data collection, digital data takes up a fairly small footprint, so it's quite easy or practical to take in vast amounts of data to be used to perpetrate a fraud or perpetrate a crime. Okay, so for example with keystroke logging and so on like that, they can take in vast amounts of data and then decipher that data, analyze it and use it for the crime they want to do, and that's a characteristic. Action at a distance. A lot of this stuff will happen, and I'll go through the economic model behind this and how diverse it is around the world globally and how it's used, but it tends to be at a distance. It's not going to be somebody next to you, it's not somebody breaking physically into your premises to commit the crime. It'll be somebody from the far side of the world or sitting on a beach or whatever that happens to be behind the crime itself. Provocation, again, the web enables ideas to flourish. You'll see when we go through the economic model that it's no longer one person commits a fraud, there are many people involved in a crime. Okay, and each participant has their own part to play in there, and they have their own role. And because the web now enables, we go through some crimeware, and we go through how they actually teach people how to do this, because they're creating a business, they're creating an economy online, and it's worth tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions by some estimates in the world today in relation to this. Okay, so the categories, you've got four categories of cyber criminals, if you like. You've got the criminal types who will want to attack for fraud, for theft, for larceny, identity theft, whatever it happens to be. You may have destructive attacks, people that just want to cause you problems with your business. There might be a denial of service type attack, cyber terrorism, somebody that doesn't agree with your ethics as a business. I mean, we've come across cases like this, for example, where we might be working with an insurance company, but the insurance company may insure a life science company, and the hacktivists and so on may not be happy with their choice of clientele and so on like that, and they may cause issues or cause problems. We've also seen this in relation to other things like I'll get down to espionage attacks and so on like that as well. So there's a sort of a crossover there, if you like, between those two. There's nerd attacks. Some people do it just to prove they can. They want prowess, they want to make a name for themselves within the community, and you'll see as we go through this, there is a real community, there's a whole other world there that people belong to in relation to this, and they get prestige, they get notoriety, and they get a lot of money from it as well, if that happens to be the motivator as well. Espionage attacks, they happen a lot. People don't realise it, but some household names are involved in industrial espionage, and they will cause their competitors problems, or they will try and hack into their competitors to get an advantage, whether that's IP theft, or whether, I don't know whether anybody's ever read the Richard Branson's autobiography, but in there you'll see that British Airways were involved in hacking into Virgin Airlines databases to get the reservations in order to contact those people and sell them cheaper tickets, cause denial of service attacks and so on. So all these sort of things happen in the real world, and we know for 100% it happens. We get contacted all the time by nefarious companies that may want us to use our skills and our talents to do those sort of things as well. So it's actually a real threat in relation to that. It's not the stuff of TV and so on. So I'm going to get through this mundane stuff pretty quickly, and we get on to the sexy stuff, if you like. Spam. These are all the traditional threats. You got, okay, spam, we all know it's a huge problem. It's an overhead that we have to deal with, but there is massive risks associated with spam. We'll go through those. There's fraud, most debilitating and destructive of threats. You have, if you like, the pre-digital or pre-internet age, fraud was the risk. It still exists, but now it's just done in a different way. They can execute frauds and scams in a completely different way, and there's some very clever approaches they have to this. As I mentioned, commercial espionage there, we've insider threats. No matter what survey means, statistics are statistics, but whatever when you look at the vast majority will always say insider threats are where your threats are. It'll always be the vast majority within any report or any result there to say that it's still the malicious insider can be the weak link in the chain. Okay, so staff that may have decided to leave but have not yet resigned, maybe disgruntled. We get a lot of this in the public sector and stuff most recently and things like that, where they may just want to cause problems and they may want to cause issues and so on like that. So it's being able to protect against those sort of things. And of course systems failures, mistakes happen, people press the wrong button, you know, and things happen on a day-to-day basis. If we look at each sector, phishers tend to attack. So phishers, phishing is where people try to redirect people to a website, send out a spam email. Somebody clicks on a spam email, thinks they're going to their bank, but they're actually going to a bogus website. That's a phishing attack. And so phishers, they would tend to be retail, financial institutions, those sort of things. Industrial spies will hit IP companies. Hacktivists for the social impact of people that they disapprove against, so that they will literally hack, cause problems on those sites, maybe deface the site, maybe deny the service, but there can be much more sinister things that are going on behind those groups, and those groups are often infiltrated by commercial hackers to use those people to create botnets of networks that can be used to create massive attacks for financial gain, and I'd say we'll go through some of that as well. You've got cyber terrorists. Cyber terrorism is actually a huge deal. We don't hear that much about it here in Ireland, but there's a cyber war going on between China, the States and so on like that, all attacking each other's machines all the time. We were over in Boston last year working with the US military on some of their systems that had been compromised and bringing their standards up around log management and how they were attacked. And there's a lot going on, and it tends to be coming from the Chinese region. That side of things. And of course fraudsters. Fraudsters just want to find any way they can to siphon off cash. So, threats originate with people, and there are 5 distinct groups. You've got criminals, you've got malefactors, you've got spies, you've got the undesirables, and you've got the incompetent. But these people exist both inside and outside of an organisation, okay? And they tend to have an effect disproportionate to their numbers. Okay, so that tends to be the grouping of where you get these threats. If we look here at a recent survey, you'll see that 64% of organisations had bots and zombies within their organisations there, or malware infection, sorry, 23% had bots and zombies. So you see that this is actually one of the most recent surveys, and that's why we use it. There's actually a high percentage of organisations are still being hit with the most basics of things like phishing and so on. 34% of organisations had been the target of a phishing attack. So in other words, their company was being misrepresented on the web, and people were trying to defraud their clients and their customers from money. Okay, a little bit about the law, because I think this helps put it into context. Okay, the European Police Agency, Europol, have noted that the high technology crime will continue to represent one of the major areas of crime in the future, paralleling the development of e-commerce and internet banking. Okay, so no great shakes there, but what they're saying is obviously that this is something that they're aware of, and it's going to be a bigger issue as things go on. I mean, if you look across at the States and you see how much has grown over there over the last 4 years, and I'll reference a lot of stuff there about how it's actually grown dramatically year on year over the last few years there. But computer misuse legislation can be used in 2 ways. You can use it against the cyber criminals, okay, if they have done something wrong to you, but you also must adhere to computer misuse legislation. And at the end of the day, it's actually the directors of the organisation are responsible under computer misuse legislation. So they can't blame system failures, they can't blame anything else. It's actually written within the Cyber Convention, European Convention on Cybercrime. So the book stops at the board level. How's the heat, everybody? Is it too warm, too cold? It won't. That's good. Yeah. It warms it. Okay, so we look at the, mentioned there, the Convention on Cybercrime. The Council of Europe adopted the Convention on Cybercrime. And this basically, they took an effort to actually define what is cybercrime, what can be cybercrimes. Because obviously this is something without borders. This isn't something that just can be within one territory, within one country and so on. So they broke it down into offences against the confidentiality, integrity and availability of your information assets, and they broke down into computer-related offences, so they'd be things like computer forgery, related fraud and so on. Things like content-related offences, so that would be things like child porn and so on, and copyright infringements. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, under the Convention on Cybercrime, the directors of every business are responsible to make sure their systems are not used to perpetrate a crime under any of those headings. Okay? It's not that you would actually do the crime yourself, but you have to be able to safeguard your systems are not used in the crime. Okay, so here we are, it's Article 12, Paragraph 2, ensure that a legal person can be held liable where the lack of supervision or control by a natural person has made possible the commission of a criminal offence established in accordance with this convention. Who's adopted this? Not just Europe, the OAS, which is the Organisation of American States, and APEX, so the Pacific Rim as well, have adopted this convention on cybercrime, and they see this as leading legislation and a way to guide organisations dealing internationally with each other. So this is the legal standpoint, if you like. So now we get into the good stuff, if you like, the more up to date. So, excuse me. So over the last 4 years, it's gone from rudimentary phishing. So 4 years ago, cybercrime was all about maybe a spam email going out, trying to get you to buy Viagra or a Rolex watch or whatever it was, or a spam email trying to fish you over to another website to try and steal your credentials. Often quite crude, very easy to deal with. You block the odd site, or you capture the spam email, no big deal. Okay, and you have the 419 scams. 419 scams is from Nigeria. It's a phrase given around the typical Nigerian scam of trying to trap people into giving out their account details, get money in for various reasons and so on, and guess what? The person gets ripped off. They've got much more sophisticated, okay, incredibly sophisticated now. There's a whole underground economy exists behind this. Okay, the value, as I say, is between tens and hundreds of billions, depending on what statistics you look at. But even a fairly conservative estimate would be 4 billion over the last 2 years in Europe in cybercrime. That's what they know about, that it's being tracked and so on. So at the end of the day, whether it's the monetary loss or whether it's reputation loss and so on, this is a huge area and a huge business. And I'll go through some of the characters that are involved behind this, and you'll find, one guy was caught with $11 million. He'd only been at it 2 years. So it's quite a lucrative game, and he was quite low down in the chain as well. So there's massive money. This is outdone drug trafficking. It's less risky. It's certainly less risky than going in with a gun into a bank and trying to rob it, if you can steal from the customers of a bank or so on, or another institution, so on. So the reason for growth, internet population explosion, obviously, a lot more people on the internet. There's a lot more incentives. We show how easy and lucrative it is to steal the most basic, simple data. And that if you get that data, how valuable that information is on the open market in what's known as carding forums, and we'll go through those. Division of labour in the market. No longer do you have to be the guy in the toga with the sandals who knows it all and can hack in and sitting there with the Smarties and cans of Coke till the early hours of the night. You just do your part in the crime, and it can be as simple as buying and selling lists, okay, within forums, and you can make a lot of money. A lot of cash out of that. You can create Trojans, you can create viruses, all of these using crimeware toolkits, and we'll show you those as well. Experts are now passing down knowledge, because they know, just like any other industry, that the more people they can get in the industry, the more money they can make, because they keep themselves here, they sell the tools they use. So it's not the people that get rich from getting the gold, but selling the shovels, if you like, in a gold rush. So these people are selling all the tools, they're putting out free training videos on how to hack and all those sort of things, because that's how they're going to make the money out of it. They're even writing books and so on, that side of things as well. And malicious tools is one of the biggest growth areas in this. So what has resulted over the last 4 years is you now have a number of loose-knit firms. So in other words, what I mean is a number of people that know each other within the forum. But when you look at that, they're actually working. One guy is the reseller, one guy's the wholesaler, one guy's the agent who gets in, the guy who crack passwords, who create a phishing page and so on. And they all work together as part of an economy, and they're loose-knit firms. And then you have actually the structured hierarchy, like the mafia. And they will work like a structure the whole way down, from boss the whole way down through, and they have their agents, they have their campaigns and so on, and how they run. So this is just a typical top-end structure, where you have the criminal boss up the top, working with an underboss, the attackers, and the whole way down, right down to the stolen data reseller. But I'll show you this in more detail in a moment. We'll spend some time going through that. So malicious tool evolution has been one of the biggest drivers of this. Okay, the tools are getting a lot more sophisticated, a lot easier to use. You wouldn't believe what you can buy for $150 and what it can create. If you want to create a Trojan for a specific website tomorrow, or a phishing website, if you have $150 and some basic computer knowledge, you're up and going. Sorry. Okay, so first of all, I'll give you the 20,000 feet view. Okay, the biggest targets at the moment are retail, banks, and consumers. No big surprise there, I suppose. The developing trend, though, is stock manipulation, pump and dump scams, as they're known. And I'll go through a little detail on these in relation to how they're using pension funds and mutual funds and so on to drive up stock prices of certain stock, sell the stock, get their money out, but how they're actually destroying companies as well by doing this. The developing trend is Trojans and farming. Farming is like phishing. Okay, the difference with farming, just from a technical perspective, is that when a person goes to the website, they type in the correct name, but the DNS server brings them off to a bogus website, and they're none. So it's through, if you like, DNS poisoning and a number of attacks and techniques around the DNS server itself. So people think they're going to the right site, but they're actually not. Most likely threat these days is to have your laptop stolen or to have a Trojan. Okay, so that's a high perspective on the way things are at the moment. Okay, so again, just a recent statistic there from the anti-phishing group. You can see it's over 93% is the financial sector. So now if we look at the economic model, okay, we have wholesalers, retailers, and independent contractors, because this is an industry. Okay, so these are the people that take part in the industry. Now this is the hardest part of this morning, is to follow the next chart. If you get this, everything else will flow. So I'll spend a little bit of time going through this. Okay, you've got a user. Okay, so that's your customer, if you like. The user credentials. Okay, that's a good guy. Okay, so they're okay. You've got the financial institution. Despite the press, they're the good guys in this scenario as well. Okay, so then you've got the supplier. A supplier is somebody who supplies credit card details. I'll use the scenario of credit card details for the moment, just for simplicity. So that's the supplier of credentials or credit card details, okay, within this industry. Then you've got acquirers and middlemen. They're people who will go to a supplier and then sell them on, okay, and they will sell them on to carding forms and so on, which are coming down to. You have agents. Agents are people who may be database hackers. They may be malicious insiders within your organization. They could be an agent for an acquirer, for a supplier. Often the acquirer and supplier is the same person. I'll show you this on the chart now in one moment. Those agents will be people who put together a phishing website, someone who puts together a piece of code for attacking, someone who puts together a Trojan. There's lots of different types of agents that they will use in order to put this together. So again, you can see it's not one person does this. It's broken down into an industry. So a guy who wants to perpetrate a fraud will go find a supplier, the supplier gets the agents, and the agents come together and they formulate the whole thing. You have somebody who oversees it, like a project manager. You have carding forms. Carding forms are websites that are set up specifically to buy and sell stolen credit card data or credentials, banking credentials. You have carders. They're the people who operate on the carding forums. So they buy and sell credit card information, user credentials, those sort of things. You have fraudsters. This is at the very consumer end of this economic model. These are the guys who decide, I want to buy some bogus credit card details because I want to start a little shopping spree or do a little bit of fraud myself. So in this economic model, they're actually the customers of the supplier. Then you have retailers. Retailers are good guys. They're guys who sell high value goods on the internet or in stores and so on like that. But they're part of this. You have reshipping zones. So they would be people like anyone from a Regis office to a hotel to a warehouse, anywhere where goods can actually be delivered and maybe be picked up at a later point and so on like that. And they're reshipping zones and so on. And then you have a money mule. A money mule is somebody who they always say inadvertently got involved in this crime. But generally what happens to be is a spam will go out offering somebody part-time work with nefarious headers on these sort of titles, like, you know, financial agent for a company overseas and so on like that. But one common thread in all of this is that they will have to provide their bank details. Okay, so what they do then is, if I'm the fraudster in this case, I will send the money that I've stolen into the money mule's account. I'll then ask that money mule to Western Union to somebody else, and then it can't be traced back to me. But generally there'll be a chain. They'll actually do it a few times of using Western Union to get the money back. So I'll go through it now and make a bit more sense up here on this chart. Okay, so up the top here we have the account credentials. Okay, so that's what they're after. They're after the credit card number, the CVV, they're asking the username, passwords, PAC codes, all those sort of things up there. In between here you've got the financial institution, so that's the bank or whatever it happens to be. You've got the supplier. This is the supplier to the black economy, to the economy of cybercrime. And she deals with getting these details. So how do they go about that? They use their agents here. Their agents may provide tools, like crimeware kits. They may, as I say, be phishers who create phishing pages. They may create spam emails, maybe malicious insiders and so on. The list goes on and on and on, the type of agents that can be used, okay? The supplier and acquirer may be actually the same person, but it tends to be that the acquirer will deal with the supplier and bring them down to the carding form. The carding form is wholesale. Okay, this is where you go along, minimum purchase $500, and you buy a list of credit card numbers, those sort of things. And they bring it to this wholesale market. This is the market where they're sold in. And I'll show you where these sites are, how you get into them, how you buy the details, how you sell the details, all those sort of things within those forms. Those forms are full of carders. Okay, so what you'll start to realize is how valuable information is as we go through the next few slides, because it's not about hacking into a bank and trying to transfer money from a bank. Okay, that's too difficult. Okay, it's about hacking into a database of user IDs and getting them, or stealing a laptop of 40, 50,000 user IDs on whatever it happens to be on that particular laptop at the time, and taking those. And the minimum price you're going to get is $5 a user ID, and I'll show you it's a lot more than that you get in these forms. So you're talking about a €200,000 laptop if you steal a laptop, and you take that data and put it on. I mean, the most recent case of something like that was the $15 billion USB stick that came from Boeing and went over to China with all the plans for the new Boeing airplane. So, I mean, you know, this information is extremely valuable in the right hands, and it's often resold and resold and resold again and again and again. The states, they've put in a lot of new. They've got a lot better at stopping stolen credit cards, but they're still not perfect. Obviously, they don't have other advanced controls that we'd have like chip and pin and things like that. But they've actually got very good at stopping them online. So that's driven the price down in the States, but European pricings have gone up in relation to European credit cards and so on like that, because they're a bit harder to get. So you've got your carders down here, and the consumers. So this is the guy operating out of his bedroom or whatever, and wants to do a bit of fraud, wants to order stuff from online websites and get it delivered. So typically what he will do is, he will have gone into, dealt with a carder and bought some credit card details, okay, from the carding forum. He might even go into the carding forum, but I've met this guy on another non-related forum, and we go through where these guys hang out, where they incentivize people to get them involved and so on with that. So they will get their credit card details, and there's basically two different types of frauds they can perpetrate. One is they can try and transfer cash from a financial institution to a money mule. So if they've got somebody's banking details, through whatever method they've used and technique, they will go into that person's account and send money into an unsuspecting person who's just taken up this new part-time job that they've got out of a paper or off a legitimate website or whatever it happens to be, and the money goes into their account. So $5,000 arrives in, and they have to transfer $4,000 by Western Union over to another person. Then that person transfers it on and so on, and the money gets laundered. What happens to most money mules is they become victims of their boss at the end of the day, because when the money mule is finished with them, they clear out their account because they have all the details and so on like that. And they tend to have wrote them in with keylogging software and all those sort of things. So most times money mules become victims themselves at the end of the day. And they might even be aware that they're doing something that's not fully legit, but they don't care. You know, if it's easy money, you know, just go down, get money into your account, and Western Union make it grand. It's easy money for students and so on like that. It's huge in Australia. There's been massive Australian scams, generally in the US and Western Europe, and Australia is where it's handled. The other type of scam they'll do is they'll buy goods online. So high value goods, 50% odd percent, I think it's 54% of card not present transactions of the frauds are card not present transactions. So people will buy high value goods that they can resell. They'll get them delivered to a reshipping or a drop zone. Okay, and then they would get those brought onto another zone, and so on, and then collect those goods and then resell them on the open market on eBay or whatever it happens to be that they sell them. So they're getting something. That's how they get their money. So that's their cashing out technique in relation to that. Okay, so here I won't go through all of this in detail, but there's a couple of things on this chart that I want to highlight to you. Is here we have the distribution attacks on this side. They'll use things like spam, and they'll use redirection. So there's a number of different techniques then within each of these categories of spam. You've got forum spam, you've got instant messaging spam, email spam, within links and so on. And then you've got redirection. So that would be things like phishing and farming and those sort of techniques. Sorry, I should mention that all of these slides are actually part of a 2-day course that we give. So I'm going quickly over them. There's a lot more detail we delve down into, but for the purposes of this morning, I'm going quite quickly over them. So they're the distribution attacks. These are the collection tactics that they use with phishing, banking Trojans, keyloggers and so on. But this is the infrastructure. They have a massive infrastructure, huge, that they use behind this, and they do that by compromising legitimate companies' resources. Okay, and this is where the conventional cybercrime comes in, because if your organization is part of a fraud, you may be in the firing line in relation to law or in relation to lawsuits and so on like that behind this. Because this is what they use. They don't go out and obviously buy servers and set up data centers and so on, not when they can compromise other ones. So they will compromise other people's data centers, use their servers, host botnets on them and so on, zombies, all those sort of things on them and so on. And this is sort of tools they use here, and it goes back to the side. So a couple of factors about how this guy decides how he's going to cash out or make his money. Okay, so what they'll do is they'll balance the risk and reward when they have their, so they've taken a load of credit card details. They want to know, well, what price should I sell them at? What way should I get my money out of this? Will I buy goods online, or will I get some money meals and so on? So they'll weigh up these. They'll weigh up the balance of risk and reward, the quantities involved, the location that they're in, their own personal experience in relation to this. Have they done it before? Are they old hands at this? Can they trust the agents they're dealing with? Can they ensure their anonymity with how they're working with this and so on in the chain? Can they trust the other people they're dealing with? Have they dealt with them before? Because a lot of these guys, they just deal with handles. They never meet. It's all virtual. This is a virtual economy that's going on. Their own personal risk tolerance and the amount of money that is going to be laundered. Okay, so a couple of examples here in relation to phishing. The latest, obviously they can have quite complex ones now that have come out, and the latest thing is whether they'll try and hit you and say, the downturn in the economy and so on, they'll say, do you want to extend your credit? Click here, fill out the form to extend your credit. And they'll send you something which is pre-filled in with maybe the last 4 digits of your credit card. It'll look the real deal, it'll have your username in there and so on, because they picked up this information from your machine. Okay, and they'll go, to explain where they get it off your machine and so on. But they'll have a pre-filled out form, and you only need to put in 1 or 2 more details or a few more details. But that's the goal they want. This is all about building blocks. And we go through that, and that's how the crime is committed, by building blocks of information. Get one piece, that piece leads to another, and so on as you go through. So here you can see one here. It can be about somebody cancelling their account and so on. So it tends to be something fairly immediate. Something like, okay, I need to do it straight away. They don't really think. They're under pressure. They fill out the form and they click and go off. Other ones will be more around certain global events, Hurricane Katrina, whatever it happens to be. They'll put up fake pages, people think they're donating money, and this is another way of scamming money off people. Sample Trojan here, you can see that the person thinks they're clicking on a link, okay, to image.jpg. This is actually a piece of crimeware that's about to be installed. But it displays itself as an image, so a guy thinks he's getting a holiday snap or whatever else he thinks he's going to get, and he clicks on instant messaging, and it's actually a piece of crimeware that's about to be installed. Here we have one using the redirect exploit from Internet Explorer, and what this one does is, you see the link is ebay.com, and you go, that's fine, I'll click on that, but it's not eBay. It's using an exploit within Internet Explorer to go to another website, and you don't realize it. This is one, actually, there's a friend of mine that is actually here today, but he came to recently. I thought this was a good example to show people how actually this spamming works and so on. A friend of mine started sending me all these emails I was getting from his email address saying, buy some Viagra, buy Rolex watches, all this sort of thing. So I contacted him and said, listen, you've got a virus, you've got to do something on your machine. So he cleared down his machine, did all his updates, did his virus and so on, but the emails kept coming in. Now, why was the question? And the question is because what the virus did was, it took his address book and put it off onto another machine. So within a few seconds we tracked down where that machine was. So we've got the longitude and latitude of its IP address, everything. It's actually in France. So within a few minutes his address book is now on another infected machine in France, sending out these emails to his people. There's nothing he can do about it. He can switch off his laptop, he can patch it, he can remove the virus, it's too late. All the email addresses are now sitting over there. So it's not always about what happens to you, but the people you deal with. Okay? So if you start getting lots of spam or lots of attacks and so on, and then you go, how did they get my credentials, how did they get this? Because your details may be on somebody you're dealing with's machine, and that it's their machine that's got compromised. Okay, this is a phishing life cycle. This is planned out like any other project. This isn't a guy just sitting away hacking, banging against things and trying to get through, or thinks he'll send out a few emails and see if he get a hit. It's a managed plan. There's a lot of money involved in this. So they'll have a planning stage, setup stage, attack, collection, fraud, and of course post-attack, where they'll destroy their evidence, they'll get rid of everything and so on like that. So these are all the different stages of that. Okay, let's look at crimeware. Crimeware so far used to create these sort of things, phishing sites, Trojans, viruses, all those sort of things. This is a sample of some of them that you can buy. There's a message redirector, an email redirector, This one I particularly like. It's in the cloud, so it's sort of we have a joke with this because sort of a managed service offering where they go in and you buy credits and you can get whatever details you want. You hit this, it's a full-end website, and you can buy whatever you want. So in here we can go in and say, right, we want bank identification numbers. We can pick what country we want. So country and credit card type that we're looking for. So you put in your filter of what you're looking for. You click on it. Up comes, so whatever you're looking for, it's 50 credits for date of birth, credit balance 1.5, 5 credits is $1 US. And you just extract all the information you want and you pay as you go. Okay, for any credentials you want. So that's the way they look. So primary kits, they start about $150. Okay, dead easy to use. Most of them have Trojans in them as well, so you just need to know what you're doing if you do play around with the stuff and so on like that. They evade most antivirus tools in their operation and how they work. And they use screen scraping technology to avoid key logging detection, but they're sophisticated and easy to use at the end of the day. Now we look at some of the other types of threats. Typical sort of threat that's used to talk about network intrusion, and I'll go through a little bit more because it is a good example because it's one of the biggest mess-ups ever, was TK Maxx. They lost roughly 45-50 million credit card details. That was network intrusion. Okay, that's simple. Somebody broke into the network and stole the credit, but they did that through sniffing. They sniffed the wireless network from the car park and got the details. It was known as a low and slow attack. It took place over a long period of time, so it wasn't just one event to click off an alarm within their systems to say, you know, logging is being disabled or anything like that. It was a combination, and that they didn't have any systems that could correlate these events within their environment to say, you know, what happened on day 22 was this and happened on day 35 was this, and to correlate those two things, say something's actually happening in our environment. Because these criminals are clever. They don't just hit and run. They will take their time to work on these threats. Look at key logging. Key loggers are 10 a penny. I mean, there's one there, you can buy them anywhere. People use them for jealous boyfriends to send, you know, attachments to their girlfriends and so on to track what's going on. They can be used for criminal intent, all those sort of things. They will lie dormant on the machine. A lot of them will lie dormant because if you're not set up to take in that influx of data, every character summary types, every backspace, everything like that, then you only want specific information. So what they'll tie it into now is maybe perhaps when a specific URL is put into the web address, then the key logging comes on automatically. And it will then start recording everything that you're typing. So your username, your password, all those good things. We'll go through at that point. So they will look for specific URLs in relation to that. They then take all that information over Internet Relay Chat, we'll send it back through. So in the real world side of things, you've got skimmers. Skimmers are most common skimmers are in restaurants and things like that, where you'll hand over your credit card detail to just skim it through a little device that can be in the waitress's apron or behind the bar with the barman, whatever it happens to be. To just skim it through whatever. They take that little box, they put the USB key onto their USB, they put it on the laptop and they upload it to a carding form and they get a price per card. Okay, because now they have your card details. I think it's around $175 or something with the CVV code at the moment is the going rate for an Irish Gold card or higher with the CVV code on the back. And obviously a lot of times they can get the pin off you as well, which increases the value. I think that's the one that goes up to $175. Is when they can actually get the pin off you as well. So in a bar situation, if you're not covering in a restaurant, whatever it happens to be, they can get your details. So you can think of the sort of how lucrative that is if you're in that environment, whether it's a hotel or a bar, whatever it happens to be. Buying and selling information. 3 places you can do this. Okay, you can go to a carding forum, you can go to dump vendors, or you can go to non-carding forums. Carding forums, the most reputable ones, are actually hard to become members of and get into because they're aware of what's known as rippers. Rippers are people who will try and sell them bogus lists and of no value and so on like that. So they'll have a small vetting procedure, okay, to get through there. They tend to only be run for a short period of time, then they change address, change location, and so on, because law enforcement or other forums will attack them, because this is a competitive business. So you'll have one forum attacking another forum with a denial of service attack to make sure that they own them and so on like that. We'll go through actually some of those as well. 50% of them are in English, most of the rest are in Russian, but there are ones in Vietnamese, Arabic, and Swedish. And that's some of them that are there at the moment. Carter, Carding World, blah blah blah, Verified to Lower You, and so on. That are very, that's what they look like. That's Verified to Lower You. It's another one. This is a dump vendor. Dump vendor is slightly different than a carding forum. Dump vendor tends to be an individual who just wants to open up his own shop on the internet, selling his own details that he stole. Okay, he tends to do it on free hosting sites, things like Yahoo and stuff like that, where they can host their own free website, and they would just open up shop, sell for a short period of time, and disappear. a non-carding forum is where they will find forums that exist on the web that aren't moderated by somebody. Two examples that we found very quickly to put these together. One was classicauthors.net and Yazdi, which is an open source software. They'll find a forum and they'll operate in that forum. It's got nothing to do with credit cards, nothing to do with anything, but they'll go in there and they'll send messages around that they're all working on this, and they can exchange messages within this forum about how to buy and sell the information. So, if we look at some of the notable carders, they obviously all work off these secret handles they use and names that they use. You've got Iceman digits, you've got Lord Sir, Draw, and so on. But the daddy of them all is a guy called Albert Gonzalez. Albert Gonzalez in 2002 started up the Shadow Crew on the dark market. He's the guy who, if you like, invented a lot of this stuff or brought it into a professional stage of people going from hobbyists in hacking and so on into the real thing. He's now been indicted last August 2009, I think it was. He got indicted. But he's the guy that was behind the TK Maxx attack and so on. And he owned a lot of the forums and started up or was behind a lot of the forums that went on. The main two big forums in the States was Dark Market and Shadow Crew, but he got caught doing something very simple on an ATM fraud machine, and he was looking at doing some serious time. So he became a snitch for the FBI for this guy, Malarski, and Malarski got him to put a VPN client on all the members of the carding forum, Shadow Crew and so on's machine, supposedly to make communication secure, but really it was so the FBI could record everything. So for 2 years they recorded everything coming in and out and what was going on, and they built up a knowledge of this industry, and that's where a lot of this information is coming from. It's the knowledge of how these actually people operate and so on, and what they do. It was coming time to arrest them. They only got 28 out of 4,000, which they saw as a huge success. I don't know why, because they didn't actually get any of the big fish, because Gonzalez actually warned all the big guys beforehand, and the big guys disappeared, opened up their own forums and so on like that. So if we look at it, like for example, this guy here was part of the dark market. He's a Turkish guy, and he was found with millions of the TK Maxx credit card details on his systems as well. So as these arrests started going down internationally, they started to say, right, the FBI have to close down this operation. It's called Operation Firewall, and it was time to close down that operation and start arresting it and closing things down. They'd have kept it open a bit longer, but we want to do more. But it kicked off a number of international projects. The Spam House in Germany, SOC in the UK, and the US had their own initiatives going on that side of things. This is how it looks at the moment. This guy here is the daddy, Albert Gonzalez, as I say. This guy, Max Butler, always suspected Malarski of being an FBI agent. Someone was never able to prove it, so on like that. He's also been arrested. This guy here, $11 million in 2 years he made. That's what they caught him with, right? And all he was operating was like out of a bedroom with PCs, and that was it. Phenomenal amount of money. A lot of them, because of extradition and so on, they can't extradite them back over to the States. So most of them are still free and go. This guy is interesting. If you ever come across anything about this guy, Stephen Watt? He's 7 foot tall. He's been writing code since he was a child, and he's the guy who wrote the sniffer to sniff TK Maxx's network and so on. So they're all buddies. They all hang out together, and they're all going to jail together. So we look at the price of stolen data. Okay, this is an average price over a 30-day period. Here's the good one: credit card information plus the PIN. $175. Look at anything, a counterfeit credit card you get for $40, a phishing page for $100, holograms, change of billing addresses, all those sort of things. It's a price list, and this is the price list, an average price list from the carding forums. So think about it now when somebody says, oh, we only lost a laptop and it had 40,000 details on it, usernames, addresses, bank details, and so on. We now decide we're going to encrypt laptops and things like that. How much is 40,000 user details worth in this market? Never mind all the other indirect costs that are associated with losing this sort of information, so on like that. So factors that drive the price: the ease. How easy was it to get this information? Is it commonplace information? So on. That's a factor in the price. The availability of those type of accounts, the eagerness to sell, and the constant presence of rippers within the forum. So these are the factors within the forum that drive the price up and down. And it's a bit like a stock price. It really depends on the day, but they were the average price over 30 days. Prices have gone down, as I say, recently in the US due to banks being more successful at blocking stolen cards. Money mule operations. Forget about money mules. These are the individuals whose bank accounts have, to their knowledge, being used to send money onto a third party, wiring it onto Western Union, whatever it happens to be. So they think they've got a job. they've replied to an email and so on, they think they've got a job. The trend is now to use very sophisticated emails to hook these guys in, especially with the downturn in the economy. They're going to job sites, they're going to places where they know people are going to be, you know, in need of money and so on like that, and they're trying to hook them in and use them and so on like that. They use what's known as rockfish style tactics. What rockfish is, rockfish was the name of a group of hackers from Eastern Europe, and they'll use single one-time use URLs. Okay, so this makes it very difficult then to block these guys, and they'll do that by using a network of zombie computers or whatever around the internet, and every email that goes out has a different URL on it. So it's very hard to block that particular type of message, or control what's going on, or block down that site, you know, what's going on in relation to it. So another trend in this is they'll use top-level domains from Hong Kong. So if you see a lot of emails coming in from Hong Kong, chances are there's some sort of scam going on. And the reason being that, as they say there, live you a long time, was written in one of the emails up there in relation to the sites will live you a long time in Hong Kong. They don't get shut down. Even when they're reported that they're involved in a crime, it takes months to close down a site in Hong Kong, because the domain authority there does not respond to abuse emails and so on like that. And the same way, you know, if a fraud was up on a .ie domain, it would be closed down within hours and so on. That doesn't happen with .hk. So, but 44% of scams and so on are coming from .hk at the moment. So it's a big trigger factor. Okay, look at a sample email here. Looks the real deal. So it's up the website. Looks legitimate. Credit Suisse Group. Career opportunity, once hooked emails were asked to transfer money as part of the training exercise. Very convincing URL and so on like that. This was a huge one from Australia. This brought in thousands of people and hooked them into becoming money mills. This is a sample titles they use for the jobs. Private financial receiver, money transfer agent, country representative, shipping manager, sales representative, secondary high play job and so on. So say US, Western Europe and Australia are the targets for these. This is actually happening a lot in Ireland with the money mills. And the GBFI, Garda Bureau of Investigation, are handling a lot of cases in relation to money mills. It tends to be students in Ireland that get involved and they'll take $3 grand in, send the $2 grand out and all that sort of things. There's no way to trace the money once it's gone. So it's a hard way to go. So evolution of techniques. So phishing, or some people say the term phishing comes from password harvesting. There's a debate, who cares? But they'll use similar sounding names, things like company name-info.com, or they'll block the actual URL coming up on the web page. So phishing again is redirecting somebody to a bogus website trying to catch somebody in. So they might have teaminfosecinfo.com or whatever, and people think they're on the legitimate website and they put all the details in and they get caught in the fraud. Or they might, when you go to that website, the URL disappears up the top, so you actually don't know what website you're on. The techniques they use: mass scanning using auto-routers. So what that is, these are pieces of software that will scan thousands of IP addresses and find the vulnerabilities on each IP address very quickly. The reason they'll do that is they're trying to find hosts, and they're trying to find machines that they can compromise and use to host these sites. And this is where people can get inadvertently involved in the crime, in that side of things. So they'll use port redirection. So if the site itself can be compromised and somebody hits the website, they will redirect them out to another website. They'll use botnets, which are home PCs, business PCs, everything that have been hijacked with some malicious code on it that sits there dormant, but when the attacker says, I need to use you, it will come to life and it will send out thousands of spam emails, or it'll do a denial of service attack, or it'll do whatever it's been programmed to do. And that's how they get the computing power to be able to do this, because they're using tens, thousands of hundreds of machines that they've actually compromised beforehand. Generally it's a combination of attacks anyway, at the end of the day. Where's this developing? Where's it going at the moment? Phishing development is they're using an obfuscation technique, so to a spoofed email address, which is, you know, 101 hacking stuff. I mean, you can use shareware, you can use a lot of websites now to send out a spoofed email address, so it's not difficult. Spoofed URLs, they use a piece of JavaScript which will put up a graphic above the URL, which looks like a different website, or they will change the text that's going across there. They'll use similar sounding URLs. Okay, so they'll use the phonetics of an URL and try and find something that sounds something like it, so people just get that little bit confused when they see the, oh yeah, that sounds like it, that should be the one, and then go into it. They'll also use maybe the Cyrillic character A, which looks like an A, but American Standard Code for Information Interchange, it's not an A, it's different. So you can have Cyrillic A, IB.ie. It will look like AIB in the browser, but it's actually a different website. They may display only the IP address across the top. So the consumer goes in, they just see an IP address, they're none the wiser of what's going on. Or they may just use pop-up windows. So you go to your legitimate financial website, but then another window pops up and says, site down for maintenance, put in your details here, click to go here, or we have another offer on, or we're going to extend your credit, whatever the pop-up window says, and we'll catch them at that point. So they've gone to the legitimate website, we'll copy them on that side of things. New, relatively new thing, I suppose, fast flux hosting technique. This is when the actual phishing sites are hosted on botnets, so they can be hosted on any one of 10,000 machines around the world. So Ghana is the easy way of just blocking off one particular site or one particular IP address and closing it down and say there's a phishing site on .56 and we're closing it down, and it's like, you know, AIBripoff.com or whatever, and we're going to close that one down because the URL changes, it's on a different machine every time, so you have to use, again, rough phishing type techniques, if you like. They have to find a way to find all of these and close them all down. 80% of those takedowns involve getting the whois data, because these sites that they use mightn't necessarily be home user PCs, and generally not for these types of attacks. They'll be a company's network, a company's website, and they may host it up on that website and have it in the background within a legitimate website. So then they have to contact the owner of that domain, the technical contacts and someone, and say, listen, do you know your website is actually being used to host a phishing site? No, didn't know that. Okay, now we have to close it all down. That all takes time, long time, and a lot of expenses and effort to get involved. So we look at farming. Farming is pretty similar to phishing. It's been around since 1996, but it's been only really in use by criminals since 2003. Technically, it's a malicious web direct, so trying to bring somebody somewhere else. And the Revenue Commissioners of Ross were here with this a while back with their DNS poisoning attack. Requires more skill than phishing. Originally only covered local DNS servers, so we're getting into all the techie stuff, but it was usually only the local host file, the local DNS server, but now the phrase will cover anything to do with redirecting through a DNS and so on like that. Includes DNS spoofing, cache poisoning, or interesting voice over IP farming. Okay, now what that is redirecting voice over IP calls. Now as everybody moves to voice over IP and thinks it's fantastic, what happens if all your calls get redirected and you can't use any of your phones because every time you dial a number it goes somewhere else? So that's a voice over IP farming technique. Latest one actually, and it's interesting for people, especially from maybe their home perspective, because not that many businesses are really reliant that much on wireless networks these days. They're still moving to it, but drive-by farming. Now the name itself is misleading, because you don't have to drive by a wireless router to do this. What this is they found a weakness in wireless security routers. Most people leave them at the default username and password on the routers. So what happens is if you get anybody who has left on the default username and password to visit your website with a specific piece of JavaScript, if then that JavaScript attacks the router and changes the DNS server, you now control every website they go to, whether it's the real bank site or the fake bank site, and so on. That works on all the Linksys, all the D-Links, all the Netgear, and 77 of the Cisco boxes out there. There is firmware upgrades and so on available, but it's called a cross-site request forgery. Very simple to do, very open, because nobody really knows that much about it, but it's well employed as a technique, because you know, if you're after consumers and home users, you know, most people, they don't know how to administer their own router and change passwords and all sort of thing. Take it out of the box, connect it up, and that's it. Or even if they do, they forget about it and leave it there. And they're without the firmware patch and without closing it down, it's open to that sort of thing. So they don't know when they type in, you know, BOI.ie or whatever it happens to be, are they going to BOI or are they going to a fake BOI if they have that vulnerability. Okay, so evolution of techniques. Trojans of the future, because they're automated, they download the stored information that's on your PC itself, and they can record keystrokes and toolkits. You can completely customize your toolkits, so therefore any prevention or any detective measure you put in place to find a particular Trojan, there's going to be a million different variants, because a million different people have used the crimeware to create a million different variants of that Trojan. The wording, the colours and all those sort of things that would be involved in it. 92% of phishing is now from toolkits, 44% is from Hong Kong top-level domains. Scammers are becoming much more prolific because it's so much easier to do. Targeting financial institutions, they'll go after targeted code or generic code, so they'll have to use usernames and passwords or some form grabbing. So there's some more of this stuff. If you look at keystroke logging, say this is quite a mundane thing and quite easy, and a lot of people will now they'll get keystroke loggers, they'll put it in the back of the keyboard, put it in there, or use a software-based one or whatever it happens to be. Produces a large amounts of data. It has been incorporated a long time into remote administration tools. And if you look at these tools here, things like Background Office, Network System, these were remote administration tools used by network people. These were the names put on them. But they were extremely unbelievably powerful tools. You could take something like back orifice, excuse the name, that's what it's called, back orifice, and you could actually compile the library into code. So if you didn't know what your developers are doing, they can compile in the library for back orifice. What that means is they control your application from anywhere. Once the port is open, that it uses, they can control your application from anywhere, do anything they want to it, and so on. Now, the latest ones in this field are Nuclear, RAT Pro, RAT IFSC, and so on. But none of the keystroking logging ones are capable of grabbing forms. And that's why a lot of financial institutions, banks and so on, are using more form-based stuff, virtual keyboards, all those sort of things, to make it more difficult so that just mundane keystroke logging isn't going to pick up on it. So if we look at form grabbing, the problem with keystroke logging is an unmanageable amounts of data unless you event drive it, but it can't capture things like drop-down boxes. So if the financial institution poses you a question that you have to ask, you have to answer from a drop-down box. The keystroke logging doesn't know what you clicked on, or if it's a checkbox. So what it does now, they will sniff for post and gets. Post and gets are HTML commands, if you like, on websites for a form being posted. Are sent down. They'll use libraries like WinPCAP to sniff that information. So every time the command post, they'll say, right, I want now to capture all the data that's coming in, and they'll capture the entire form, everything that's coming down. So it doesn't matter, whatever you select in your drop-down box, they can select that with this. The other thing they'll do, and this is unbelievably powerful, is injecting DLLs into the browser. There's an object known as a browser help object, and they can inject a DLL there which will pick up all the form data before it's encrypted and after it's decrypted. Okay, so that means your SSL cert isn't worth anything because they can capture the data before it gets encrypted. So when they click to send and it's being encrypted, just before it's encrypted, the browser help object DLL takes that information and kicks it off somewhere else, and then it gets encrypted and sent to the proper database or whatever that they get the information. Other techniques, they'll use screenshots, so that every so often they may say, well, okay, I want you to take a screenshot every 2 seconds, every second, once the AIB website is loaded, whatever it must be, and they can take a picture of whatever's on your screen. So this way they can get around whatever you're typing into virtual keyboard boxes and so on like that. Available since the 90s, but now, I say virtual keyboards are bringing that on. Phishing and farming, we've gone through HTML injection. I'll show you a quick example of what HTML injection looks like. This, let's say, is a typical login box, user ID, password, right? So the guy goes to the legitimate website. Up comes the page, but instead of coming up like that, it comes up like this, because some HTML code has now been injected into that page.